So hi, hello and welcome again. I'm Oliver, Microbehunter here, and today again a video on how to connect a camera to a microscope. And today I would like to show you a few ways, 3 different ways on how you can connect a DSLR camera. Very common problem because those cameras are not really designed to be connected to a microscope. However, there are a couple of possibilities, also quite low cost possibilities, and also those that actually do work. However, each one of these possibilities has its own advantages and disadvantages. There is no system that's absolutely perfect. So I'm going to start off by showing you these 3 adapters that I have here. Of course, there are also other techniques on how you can connect a DSLR camera, but I think we're just going to focus on these 3 possibilities today. Well, let's put those here away. The first one is this commercial, intermediate adapter containing intermediate optics, so that's the way it goes, and it has over here a so-called a T2 adapter ring connected to it, and this T2 ring is camera specific. So in my case, I'm able to connect a Canon EOS camera. So you have to be just aware that these adapter rings do not exist for all DSLR cameras. So some of them are easier to get than others. However, in any case, if you have a T2 adapter ring connected to the intermediate optics here, then you can directly plug in those optics either into the photo tube, that is of course the preferred way, or into an eyepiece. However, if you connect it into an eyepiece, then of course you have to balance it out a little bit because the camera can be quite heavy and there's a danger of tipping over. So it goes on here, right? And then it locks into place just like a lens, and then you can basically insert it into the photo tube. The advantage of this system is that of course you get a fairly even illumination. There is no vignetting on the side. However, the disadvantages are because there are optics in here. This can actually reduce the image quality a little bit. So I've found that sometimes the image quality is not quite as good, depending a little bit on the settings. However, definitely good enough for casual use. But this is actually the system that I would probably recommend if you basically wants to get a very uncomplicated way of connecting a camera to a microscope. There are now 2 other ways as well. You're going to say, why do I actually need such an elaborate, bulky system if I can just connect this one over here directly, right? Why not that? Look, also screws into the T2 adapter ring. No optics in here. So does this actually also work? And it does also work, indeed. The small disadvantage is, and I have to say it's a small disadvantage, that there is some vignetting. So this means that essentially you might not be able to fit the full field of everything on the camera, but there might be some dark borders on the outside. Not a problem, really. All you have to do is you just crop this away, and the camera sensor has such a high resolution anyway that it doesn't really matter. However, there is also a slight lack of powerful focality. This basically means that when you have it connected to the microscope, then if you change magnification, you're losing focus a little bit, and you have to refocus. And also when looking through the eyepieces, and then the image is also not always in the same focus as in the camera. So you have to do a little bit of readjustment. However, I do not consider this to be a very big problem. However, when I bought this adapter, it actually said on the website that you have to try it out whether it's actually going to result in a satisfactory image quality in your case. So apparently it doesn't work perfectly for all systems. But in my case, it actually did work reasonably well. However, there is yet another way, and that's an interesting one, and that is essentially this ring, and that's all that you need. And this here connects the camera to a C-mount. And there's basically a threading in here, and the C-mount is actually also used by industrial cameras. And when you put this in here, right, then you're able to connect it directly. You're able to directly connect it to a microscope photo tube. Now, what is the disadvantage here? The disadvantage is that not all microscope photo tubes actually have a C-mount. So you have to check first whether this is actually possible. If it does have one, then this is probably the system that I would recommend because the focus is basically better. It is more parfocal than this system over here, right? Because the distances are calculated and standardized for C-mount mount, and therefore it gives you a better part focality. However, there is also a little bit of vignetting, and therefore you also have to crop in a little bit if you want to get this vignetting basically removed. Yeah, so that's basically pretty much all I want to share with you today. So these are indeed some interesting systems that you want to try out, and which one should you get? My suggestion is, of course, in the order, if you're in that sequence, if your microscope has a C-mount, then try to go for this one. Just be careful, not all phototubes have a C-mount, so you have to check actually if it is possible. Sometimes the top part of the phototube can be detached, and then you can actually have a C-mount. Some phototubes do not allow that. Otherwise, you can try this one over here. And if this does not give you the results that you want, then you basically can just reuse the T2 adapter and get yourself a slightly more expensive adapter like this one over here. Yeah, and this basically means that you have to experiment around whichever system works best for your setup. From my side, that's pretty much all I want to share with you today. Just wanted to illustrate a little bit of what possibilities there are. Leave your comments in the comment section if you have also experimented with those adapters. From my side, that's all I want to share with you. I wish you all the best. Happy microbe hunting as always, and hope to see you again in the next video. Bye-bye.